Okay. It's getting a little bit of a late start this morning, but that's alright. Had some technical stuff. And the Harvest Pride Day was there. I forgot to go a long way around the church. But so today we'll be on Proverbs 26, but as always we'll recap Proverbs 25. Proverbs kind of shifts gears a little bit. So I noticed as I was reading through, it's all of the Proverbs of Solomon, mostly the Proverbs of Solomon, but it's broken into three different sections. One, I guess, is just his group of people that took it down and wrote the Proverbs to relay it. The other is his direct writings for it. And this one, again, is the direct or different writings from his people from, we'll say, somewhere around Judah. And so you'll see the same Proverbs, but they're written a little bit differently or spoken a little bit differently. Kind of like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, same story but different. It's kind of the same thing with Proverbs. So these are also Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied out. So that's where they're taking the same Proverbs, but this was their copy of it. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. The heaven for height and the earth for depth, and the heart of kings is unsearchable. So we talked about that before. It's the glory of God to conceal a thing. What if we knew everything God knew? If we just knew everything God knew, we knew how everything was created, everybody's plan for everybody. Yeah, for one, our brains would explode. But that is why it's the glory of God to conceal a thing. So we're always seeking after the mystery of God, the search of God. What is God's plan for everybody? But it's the honor of kings to search out a matter, to try to find out what that mystery is, to try to find out what God's plan is to go after that accordingly. The heaven for height, the earth for depth, and the heart of kings is unsearchable. I'm not a flat earther, but if I was, I would use this verse a lot. And the heart of kings is unsearchable. What does that mean? Why would the heart of kings be unsearchable?
You never know what the heart's going to do.
Never know what it's going to do, right. So the king will make a decision, and all of his advisors, one will advise this, one will advise that, one will advise that. Nobody knows which one he's going to pick, and finally he'll pick kind of a wrap-up of all, or he'll go this way with it. And that's because as a king in a lot of their positions, you don't want everybody knowing exactly everything you're going to do, because you won't be a king very long. It's not how kings work for that. Take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth the vessel for the finer. Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne shall be established in righteousness. So we've all seen it. It's in like every Disney movie or every movie with kings. They always have that wicked advisor, that evil advisor is telling them what to do, telling them the bad things to do. But if you remove that from it, you'll establish more so the throne of righteousness, and it compares it here to silver and dross. So dross is kind of like, call it slag, like from welding. It's what's left over from it. The difference between slag and dross is still in the liquid form before it dries, whereas slag from the gas turns hardened. So while this is hard, it's still liquid impurities. I know it's kind of complicated, but it's just what's left over when you melt down silver, the impurities in it. Put not forth thyself in the presence of the king, and stand not in the place of great men. For better it is that it be said unto thee, Come up hither, than that thou shouldest be put lower in the presence of the prince whom thine eyes have seen. So what if we just walked into a big meeting, the Fortune 500 meeting. Say you went to where you work and you just walked into the boss's table when they're having a meeting. They're going to look at you like, what are you doing here? And you're not really going to fit in. You're going to be the lower. They're not going to talk about some certain things in front of you. Why? Because you put your presence in these places of great men. But if they say, come up here, or you keep proving yourself, they're like, well, we don't know what to do. But this guy's out there and he seems to be on it. Bring him up and let's see what he has to say about it. Well, now you have their ear about it. Basically what this is saying is don't butt yourself into places of positions of power where you're not wanted just because you can go in there, where you can reach it. Go not forth hastily to strive, lest thou know not what to do in the end thereof, when thy neighbor hath put thee to shame. So in this case, strive means to sue. It is suing. Let's look what the Hebrew word for that is. So debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another. Your neighbor shouldn't find out you're suing them by somebody else. It should come from you. And you shouldn't sue your neighbor without going and talking to him first, debating the cause for it, or else in the end, you're going to look silly when you see that you've done that. Lest he that heareth it put thee to shame, and thine infamy turn not away. Now, even if you win, you're going to be known as the guy who secretly sued his neighbor because he got mad at him. Who's going to be lining up to take his spot? Who wants to be your neighbor after that? Nobody really, right? Which is not a good thing to do. Betraying your friend, suing your neighbor, all these things. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver. As an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. If somebody's trying to help you and they're trying to reprove you, and you are wise and you hear it and you listen to them and you don't do that anymore, your life gets better, their life gets better. They're not telling you that for their glory. They're telling you that to help you. But that's why you have to listen. That's why they have to be reproving you in the correct manner, because it is as an earring of gold or an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. It's beautiful, is what he's trying to say. It fits in perfectly. It stands out, but goes together. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is the faithful messenger to them that send him. For he refresheth the soul of his masters. So what is this about a messenger? We're going to talk about it a little bit more today in 26. But a faithful messenger to them that sent him. You didn't have a lot of phones back then. Not a whole lot anyway. You didn't have a lot of paper, even a lot of stuff like that. They had plenty, don't get me wrong, they had parchments, but not every single person did. And if you wanted it, you had to go find it from somebody. It wasn't just laying around books and books of it in a 99-cent folder from Walmart. But you had to get messages across. And how did you get these messages across? You had to send it with somebody to go from one city to the next city to the next city, or from somebody to hand it to somebody, to hand it somebody, to hand it somebody. Normally in caravans or in different trade routes they would do this. But what if you gave it to somebody you couldn't trust? Like, this is very important, you get this letter to my wife. And then 4 years later you're like, dang, I guess my wife's dead because she didn't come here. And you go back to visit her and you find her there and she's mad at you for not talking to her for 4 years. Like, I sent that guy. And then she's like, well, that guy never came here. He lives on the ocean somewhere. You didn't trust him, and that is pretty bad. And we'll get to that later in 26. Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain. So boasteth himself of a false gift. This is like saying, Gary, remember that guitar from last week? I got it signed by AC/DC, Kiss, all the bands that we're not supposed to be listening to, you can think of that you enjoyed as a kid. I'll bring it to you next Sunday. Next Sunday comes, like, oh, I forgot it, but man, actually it's in the shop. I'm getting Les Paul to sign it and all these other guys and everything. And then next week comes, it's not there. It's like you're looking at all this wind and all this rain, or all this wind and all these clouds, but there's no rain coming from them. It's like a falseness, so to speak. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone. Hast thou found honey? Eat so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit it. So remember the story of Winnie the Pooh, straight out of Proverbs. This part of it was, when he went down into the cave, he filled up on honey because he found all of it, and then he got so big he couldn't get out. So this is saying, hast thou found honey, eat so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit it. Too much honey, too much sweetness does what? It makes you sick. You heard that before. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. A man that beareth false witness against his neighbor is a maul and a sword and a sharp arrow. In this case, a maul is just a big war hammer, is what they're calling it. Confidence is an unfaithful man in time of trouble. It is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. Yeah. This is to get the message across. Why would he compare confidence in an unfaithful man to a broken tooth or an ankle out of joint? What can you not do good with a broken tooth? Chew, eat, anything you need to do with your teeth. And what can you not do with the foot out of joint? Walk, move, anything you need to do with the foot, right? So if everything's lining up and the fate of being stationed comes down and depends on somebody that we can't trust, let's just say that's how the cards fell, we're all going to be like, well, it's nice knowing you, everybody. See you later. We have no confidence in him. Like, you don't want to wait for that day to have all the confidence put in somebody that you can't trust when he's the only one for it. As he that taketh away a garment in the cold weather, and is vinegar upon niter, so is he that singeth songs to a heavy heart. And niter is just potash. It's exactly like baking soda. You pour vinegar on baking soda like the volcano experiments back in school. That's what this is talking about. You're going to fizz it. You're going to bubble it. You're going to agitate it. If thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he be thirsty, give him water to drink. For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward thee. So by being kind to our enemies, being kind to the people we hate, we make them even more angry, so to speak. And God, in a kind of complicated sense, likes that and will bless us for it. The north wind driveth away rain, so doth an angry countenance a backbiting tongue. So you're not supposed to feel happy when they fall, but you should be happy that you can help them. And if you want, you can take solace in knowing that God's going to bless you, and they're going to get angry for that. That's a weird little web that Proverbs tries to say with the enemies, but ultimately just help them. Don't hurt them just because they're your enemies. It is better to dwell in the corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman and in a wide house. So here we go with that. As cold waters to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. So this is repeating again. I already went over this in the last time, but it's better to dwell in the corner of a housetop, up the corner, away from everything, not a lot of room, not a lot of space, than with a brawling woman and in a wide house. So you got to think, Solomon had a lot of wives, a lot of concubines. So he probably ran into a lot of woman trouble. That's why he's the one that says all this stuff. So maybe he has different houses with different corners. Who knows? A righteous man falling down before the wicked is as a troubled fountain and a corrupt spring. A righteous man falling before the wicked. How many, not necessarily heroes, but people you looked up to, did you see do things you really disagree with in the past 2-3 years? You're like, oh, they'll never do that. And then they did it anyway. Or, oh, well, this person wouldn't. And then they did it anyway. And it kind of hurts, breaks your heart, right? A righteous man falling down before the wicked is as a troubled fountain and a corrupt spring. Who are the three people here? Yeah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Who are the other people there? Who knows, right? Exactly. Why do we remember them and nobody else in that picture? Because they didn't bend the knee to unrighteousness. They're like, look, you can kill us if you want to. We're not doing what you say because what you do is unrighteousness. It is not good to eat much honey, so for men to search for their own glory is not glory. You cover yourself in honey, say you're the sweetest person ever, eventually somebody's going to be like, man, this dude really needs to chill out on the honey, so to speak. So he that hath no rule over his own spirit, because you can't even control how much honey you eat, is like a city that is broken down and without walls. You're defenseless when it comes. If you say you can do all these different things and the time comes to actually show it, you might want to realize that you shouldn't have said every bit of what you were saying. You might should have left some parts out. So that was a recap of Proverbs 25, and let's go into 26. This one's actually a fun one. It's super easy to understand, and it's pretty interesting. This is what Proverbs, what I feel is. As snow in summer and as rain in harvest, so honor is not seemly for a fool. Who do we glorify that are fools? Maybe comedians, but that's not necessarily a fool. That's just somebody that makes us laugh in that sense. So who's just like the Three Stooges? Who growing up was like, man, I really want to be like the Three Stooges? Nobody. They're just funny and kind of weird to watch, right? This is exactly what it's saying. It's like, it doesn't make sense if you want to be foolish, or if you held them up. Like, what if we wanted to make them president? Like, oh, you three are just so funny and so silly. We want you to tell us what to do and be in charge of everything. No, you're not going to do it. It doesn't make sense. Like snow in the summer doesn't make sense. Whereas rain in the harvest, you don't want it. You don't want it there. So snow in summer. This is actually a plant called snow in summer. Makes it look like there's snow, but I thought that was cool. As the bird by wandering and as a swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. I don't know how Stu bent his thumb that way, but why is this man's hand in a mousetrap? Because he did something foolish. So would you say that it was causeless that this mousetrap smacked his hand? No, it's because he put his hand in a mousetrap. So as the bird by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. It will come with the cause. It will come because you did something to earn it, did something to get it. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. These are the punishment methods. These are how you drive 3 different things that you need to do what you want them to do. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. Almost sounds like you said the same thing here. But answer not a fool according to his folly. Number 5, answer a fool according to his folly. Acknowledge he's kind of being silly. Don't go along with his silliness to make him do even more silly things, or else it's going to reflect back on you as well. He that sendeth the message by the hand of a fool cutteth off the feet and drinketh damage. There we go with the message again. The legs of the lame are not equal, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. As he that bindeth a stone in a sling, so is he that giveth honor to a fool. Has anybody ever watched The Little Rascals? Y'all seen that movie before? Am I too old? Or you all watched it in the back? You remember the note that Alfalfa wrote? And it was like his love letter. And then he gave it to his 2 little silly friends to deliver it. And they got it all wadded up in gum and all that. They're like, I remember what it says, and says like that really not love letter to her, and so she ends up hating him. That's exactly what I thought of when I read this. He that sendeth the message by the hand of a fool cutteth off the feet and drinketh damage. You want to be able to trust somebody that you're sending out an important message with, because the legs of the lame are not equal. You're not going to give it to somebody who can't walk and say, take this to Kingsport. No, you're going to give it to somebody with capable legs, capable sense, who has done it before preferably, so you can put trust in it. He that bindeth a stone in a sling, so is he that giveth honor to a fool. What does it mean, bind a stone in a sling? So what if David and Goliath, right? I'm David, I'm swinging it around, and it doesn't come out because I bound it in it. So I sling it around again. It's pointless what you're doing. As a thorn goeth up into the hand of a drunkard, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. And when I hear parable in the mouth of fools, I remember this parable. There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, it's probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. Shame on you, fool me. You can't get fooled again, is what I'm trying to say. So it's rather fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. He couldn't remember it, and so it's a parable in the mouth of... I'm not calling him a fool, it's just funny that the way they said it. Trying to get the parable across. The great God that formed all things both rewardeth the fool and rewardeth the transgressors. So this one isn't necessarily a good verse, a good reward, as you're thinking. Like, don't worry. You don't do anything to the fools or the transgressors. God will reward the fools and the transgressors, and he'll reward them according to their works, like everyone else. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. Back and back again. Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him. So there's 2 things here. Dog returned to his own vomit. I think Eric preached on that like last Sunday or Sunday before last or something. But how many times do you quit something that's bad for you, and then you go back and you pick it right back up? Or you stop doing things that are bad for you. You go back and start doing them again. That's the same thing he's talking about here. And when you keep doing these things, you can't say, oh, that's funny that he's talking about the fools and all this, all the way up to these 11 verses. Because he's talking about you. You keep doing the same thing over and over, even though you know God doesn't like it, and you keep going back and picking it up. You start going to church for a little while, and then you just stop for a long time. But then you're like, well, we really need to start going again. You got to keep on doing the things. You don't want to be foolish. You don't want to return back to your own vomit. But that was talking about the fool. Now we're kind of shifted to a wise person. Who's like a really smart person and tries to tell everybody that they're smart. Oh, I'm so smart, it hurts sometimes. Like those people. Well, this the Bible says, seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him. Because he's smart and he knows it. So, a quote from Thomas A. Kempis here. It summed it up really perfect. Every man naturally desires knowledge. Everybody wants to know things. But what good is knowledge without the fear of God? Indeed, a humble rustic who serves God is better than a proud intellectual who neglects his soul to study the course of stars. Couldn't have been said better. Better to be a dude out in the woods with an axe, eating squirrels and poke salad that loves God than to some genius living in a lab in a big city who studies stars and doesn't worship God. It should be obvious, but the slothful man saith, there is a lion in the way. A lion is in the street. Why would a slothful man say there's a lion in the street? So he doesn't have to leave his house. So he doesn't have to go to work. So he doesn't have to do things. Kind of why a lot of churches are empty right now, because there's a lion about, right? As the door turneth upon his hinges, so doth the slothful upon his bed. The slothful hideth his hand in his bosom. It grieveth him to bring it against his mouth. So he hides it, and he doesn't even want to bring it up to feed himself. The sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that then can render a reason. The thing about lazy people is they have a million reasons why, and they are always busy. Always. He that passeth by and meddleth with strife belongeth not to him, is like one that taketh the dog by the ears. If it doesn't concern you, it doesn't concern you. But how many times have you been talking about something, somebody comes up, what are you guys talking about? Who did what now? Who said what? This is what it's talking about. You just grab the dog by the ears to make it mad. You angered the dog for no reason. As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor and say, am I not in sport? So we talk about joking around a lot. And how sometimes it's a bad thing, sometimes it can get you in trouble. But what if you played a joke on your neighbor and then he got really, really mad at you? Like the joke was, oh, I'm going to let all the air out of your tires tonight. So when you wake up to go to work, you have to stop and air them all up and you're going to be late. It's going to be hilarious. And the neighbor gets out there and he didn't think that was really funny at all. And now he's going to be late, and it might have been like the last time. And then he gets mad at you. He's like, why did you let the tires out? And you're like, it's just for fun and games. I was just playing a joke on you. No need to get all upset. That's what it's saying. Am not I in sport? When the neighbor gets mad at you. Is this not just a game? Or are we not just having fun? No, sometimes we're not. So it's saying be very careful in what you do with that. Where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. If you got nobody there that's spreading rumors or gossiping, there won't be any rumors or gossip. If you cut the head off of the snake, you don't have to worry about it anymore. As coals are to burning coals, what are coals to burning coals? If there's a bunch of burning coals and I set another block of coal on it, what happens? Eventually that one starts burning and catches fire and keeps going. And wood to the fire, what happens if there's a fire and I throw wood on it? Fire gets bigger, wood keeps going. So is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down in the innermost parts of the belly. All the secrets, all the tales. Do you know what she said? Can you believe what she's wearing? What's he doing over there? Did he really do what I just think he did? And everybody and everything loves the secrets, loves telling on all of it. But they're wounds, and they go down to the innermost parts of the belly. Why do they go down to the innermost parts of the belly? Because a lot of times people don't even think that it might not be true. And if they do think it might not be true, they'll go ask him anyway, and they'll be like, who told you you don't really stomp it out. It doesn't really go away. That'll just start the vicious circle. Burning lips and a wicked heart are like a potsherd covered with silver dross. A potsherd, just think of a clay pot is all it is. But what if you got a clay pot, almost worthless, very brittle and all that, and you lined it in silver? Sure, you made it a little bit better, but so think about when he said, you don't take new cloth to fix the old cloth, else the new taketh of the old, and both are made worse. You just devalued the silver and you didn't really raise the value at all of the clay pot, because no one's going to buy it just because it has silver on it. It's still a clay pot. So he that hateth dissembleth with his lips, and layeth up deceit within him. When he speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. No one's ever going to come angrily to try to tell you a lie and convince you of something. They're going to use that honey like we were talking about earlier, right? You're going to be sweet talking, like, listen, I know we've had our differences, but this time it's different. We really got to do something about this guy because this happened. Take a step back. Like, why are you all of a sudden being like this about it? I don't know. Throw your radars up. Don't believe him. It's biblical. When he speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. You got to figure out the why. As for the king that searches the hearts, search for the mysteries, figure out the why of everything you're doing. Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Whoso diggeth the pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin. A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it. If you are afflicted by a lie, whoever told that lie hates you, or they wouldn't have told a lie about you to get someone to like you, or dislike you, or get you in trouble in any way. So you got to think, and if they did try to lie and say that it was for good intentions, this is where the Bible warns us there that you need to check your heart on where you're at with this, because with this lie you meant to do good with actually end up causing harm. So you can say you love your brother, but if you love him, why did you lie about him like that? Or lie on him like that and everything? So the picture is a good example. You're kicking off the only thing that's keeping yourself balanced in that. And if you dig a pit, you will fall in it. You roll a stone, it will return on you. That was it for Proverbs 26. Be on Proverbs 27 next week.
Yay.
All right.